Months had passed and Ryan could finally breathe again. Taehyung had been going to therapy regularly, and it seemed like a weight had been lifted from both their shoulders. Dr. Min had reassured her that Taehyung was making great strides, understanding the triggers for his multiple personalities and slowly gaining control over them. Taehyung was more grounded now, more stable. The changes in him were undeniable. His mood swings lessened, and the unpredictable, possessive behavior she had once feared seemed to dissipate. He was gentler, more attentive, and almost normal. Each day with him made Ryan believe that therapy was working. That Taehyung was finally becoming whole again. They would meet for coffee, go on walks, and laugh like they used to. The erratic behavior, the shift in his personality, and the obsession all seemed to be fading away. Van began to believe that they finally had turned a corner. It felt like the Taehyung she once knew had returned to her, whole and healed. One day, after another successful therapy session, they sat together on a bench outside the clinic. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over them. Taehyung turned to her, a thoughtful look on his face. Ryan, he began, his voice soft but steady. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. Ryan smiled, feeling the warmth of his hand brushing against hers. What's on your mind? He took a deep breath, his eyes locking with hers. You've been with me through all of this. You've seen me at my worst, and yet you're still here. I don't know where I'd be without you. She blushed, squeezing his hand gently. You've come so far. I'm proud of you. Taehyung's gaze softened, and for a moment everything felt perfect. Then, to her surprise, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small charm bracelet. It wasn't extravagant, just simple and delicate, with a small heart charm hanging from it. Ryan, he said, holding up the bracelet, I know I've put you through so much, but I can't imagine my life without you anymore. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the bracelet, her eyes welling up with emotion. It was a sweet, innocent gesture, one that showed how far they had come. Without hesitation, she smiled and nodded. Taehyung grinned, slipping the bracelet onto her wrist before pulling her into a warm embrace. As he held her, Ryan couldn't help but feel like everything had finally fallen into place. The months of therapy, the struggles, the fears, it all seemed worth it now. A few days later, Taehyung walked out of the therapy clinic with Ryan by his side. They were laughing about something trivial. The kind of light-hearted conversation that used to be rare between them. Everything seemed perfect. As they were walking to Taehyung's car, Ryan spotted an old college friend, Jihoon, across the street. He waved her over and Ryan smiled, giving Taehyung's hand a quick squeeze before walking up to Jihoon. Hey, she greeted him brightly. It's been so long. How have you been? Taehyung stood by his car watching them from a distance. His face was calm, his expression unreadable, but to Ryan, it seemed like he was completely at ease. He gave a casual wave to Jihoon, not at all jealous or possessive. In fact, he even smiled. Ryan felt a wave of relief. The therapy was truly working. Taehyung wasn't the jealous, controlling person he once was. They had gotten through the worst of it, and now she could even talk to other guys without worrying about triggering him. After a short conversation, Van said her goodbyes to Ji-hyun and walked to Taehyung's car. He opened the door for her, the same sweet smile on his face. Who was that? He asked casually as they drove. Just an old friend from college, Van replied, glancing over at him. He's been traveling a lot. We just caught up a bit. Ah, Taehyung nodded, keeping his eyes on the road. That's cool. He didn't even press further, and Van felt her heart lighten even more. He had truly changed. The jealousy, the possessiveness, it was all behind them. They arrived at the apartment, and Taehyung walked her to the door. I'll see you tomorrow, yeah? Van smiled, unlocking the door. See you tomorrow, Tae. She closed the door, sagging contentedly. Everything was normal. She could breathe again. But on the other side of the door, as soon as Wine was out of sight, Taehyung's sweet smile twisted into something darker. His eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched as the memory of Ji-hoon flashed through his mind. His breathing became heavier, and his fist tightened at his sides. That calm, stable facade he had shown Ryan, it was just that, a facade, inside the possessive, obsessive side of him. That Ryan had once feared was still there, lurking, waiting. Therapy hadn't gotten rid of it. No, it had just taught him how to hide it better. He walked back to his car, his mind consumed with the thoughts of Ryan and Jihoon, that smile she had given him. The way she laughed with him, it boiled Taehyung's blood. No one was allowed to make her smile like that. As he sat in his car, Taehyung's obsessive side finally took over. His hand gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had to find Ji-hoon. He had to make sure that this guy Ryan knew was off limits. It didn't take long for Taehyung to track Ji-hoon down. He found him walking down a dimly lit, empty street. Completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit him, Taehyung parked his car at the end of the street and silently grabbed a baseball bat from the back seat. He followed Ji-hoon, his steps eerily calm, his heart pounding in his chest, but it wasn't with fear, it was with rage, pure, unfiltered rage. The closer he got to Ji-hoon, the darker his thoughts became. He could see Ji-hoon's carefree posture, his oblivious smile as he looked at his phone, and it only fueled Taehyung's anger. Without warning, Taehyung swung the bat. The sickening sound of the bat connecting with Ji-hoon's back echoed through the empty street. Ji-hoon stumbled forward, gasping in shock and pain. But before he could react, Taehyung was on him again, swinging the bat with brutal force. The street was dark, where the only source of light was a distant street lamp, not allowing Ji-hoon to see Taehyung's face. All he could see was a dark entity hitting him. He cried out, collapsing onto the pavement, but Taehyung didn't stop. He couldn't stop. The bat came down again and again. Each hit fueled by the twisted obsession that had been festering inside him. By the time he was done, Ji-hoon was barely conscious, his body bruised and broken. Taehyung stood over him, breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling with each breath. His eyes were cold, devoid of any remorse. He looked down at Ji-hoon, the corner of his mouth twitching into a twisted dark smile. With that, he turned and walked away, chuckling, leaving Ji-hoon bloodied and broken on the street. As he got back into his car, he wiped his hands on a cloth, erasing the evidence of his brutal act to the world and to Wyan. Taehyung was a changed man, a man who had overcome his demons, but as he drove away, a dark, possessive glint remained in his eyes. The therapy hadn't fixed him, it only taught him how to hide his obsession, and man would never know the truth. The next morning, Taehyung showed up at Wyan's apartment, his demeanor once again perfectly composed. He greeted her with his usual smile. his eyes filled with warmth and affection. Ryan had no idea what happened the night before, no idea of the violence that had erupted from the man standing in front of her. As they spent the day together, Ryan believed everything was perfect. She had no reason to suspect anything. No reason to doubt the sweet, caring Taehyung she had fallen in love with. To her, therapy had worked. Taehyung was better. They were better. Behind Taehyung's soft smile and loving words, the darkness still lingered, lurking just beneath the surface. It had simply learned to wait. Well, these are all fun and games until it happens in real life. It might be cool and exciting to read this story because it's just a mere fan fiction, or should I say, Taehyung's fan fiction. But it is important to be aware of such people, especially young girls should stay alert. And with that, this is the end of the series. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment what I should make next. I am looking for some good ideas like the Angust. So, yeah, and also make sure to follow me on Instagram. You can find the link in my About section or the description. So, yeah, this is it for the series. I'll meet you in the next video. Till then, bye bye.